Part 1. Arrival and tensions at the spaceport. I'm not the tallest aboard our ship's crew, but I'm certainly near the top end of the height chart. Not towering like some of the giants here, but with half the crew short enough to bump their heads on low pipes, and the other half only rivaling my height when they stretch on the tips of their tentacle fingers, I often catch myself feeling like one of the big players. That day, that impression was challenged more than once. We were on a routine delivery to one of the more out-of-the-way trading posts, a station that serviced a handful of nearby colonies and independent traders. I guided our hover sled into the cramped unloading bay where fuel and parts were dispensed to various ships of midsize. The air was already thick with tension before we even stepped out. "Move aside," barked a voice so deep it seemed to vibrate from inside the opaque helmet of a smasher, a member of an infamous gang known for their muscle and brute tactics, clad head to foot in thick armor plating. His companion, equally intimidating, had shoulders broad enough to wrestle buffalo for a hobby and hands that looked capable of crushing coconuts between fingers. Neither of them paid any attention to the smaller figures around, most of whom stood little chance if a fight broke out. "Official business goes first," the smasher announced, voice booming into the enclosed space. Opposing them was a line of Armalites, security agents known for their dinosaur-like sharp features and strict enforcement of rules. One of the Armalites shoved his nose inches from the smasher's helmet and hissed, "Official, ha! You're late. We were here first. Get in line." His tone carried an edge sharper than a combat blade. Backing him were half a dozen similarly impressive figures, a motley mix of large Philian aliens and some heavily muscled humans, all forming a wall of sneers and tough postures that looked ready to escalate into a full-blown turf war. Despite the glare and growls exchanged, none of them drew weapons, at least not yet, not outrightly. For now, it was just a standoff, a contest of intimidation. "We're bounty hunters," the smasher said, voice low but firm. "There's a crew of wanted criminals cruising nearby. We're here to capture them, for the greater good, naturally. Move aside." The Armorite laughed cruelly in response. "Bounty hunters? We're bounty hunters too, and we protect the rules. Nobody gets ship fuel before we do." The air crackled with tension, layered with alien growls, whistles, and some curious female growls. The aliens were diverse in sexes, but just as macho. It was a testosterone-charged standoff on a small transit hub where every inch mattered. All this ruckus swirled around a single put-upon heat seeker behind the counter, a slender figure overseeing repairs. He stood behind a battered sign, his green scales dimmed by fatigue and sour nerves. And right there, in plain sight, was a reason no one had gotten their fuel. The mid-sized ship's fueling dispenser was broken. That was good news to us. It meant our delivery, among several things, was a solution to their problem. I glanced past the hover sled stacked with heavy crates and equipment, and saw two of my crew, the strongest members, though their usual confidence seemed diminished in the face of the macho crowd. They were standing stiffly, shoulders rigid, as if bracing themselves for the storm. I guess they understood their place in the complicated interspecies pecking order that ruled these ports. One was named Blip, the other Blop. Blip shifted her gaze from one scowling face to another, calculating and predicting the impending outcome. Blop stood motionless, staring off into nothingness, his deep breaths noisy enough to indicate the tension inside. Compared to the brutes around us, I was a slender, breakable chique, a delicate species known for agility but hardly muscle. Except for that heat seeker behind the counter, I was the smallest person in the room. But none of that was my concern. "Guys," I said, cutting through the noise, "let's get your delivery on." Both Blip and Blop looked at me, and for a moment the antics around us faded. Blip relaxed, pushing back her slick-back hair, no longer trying to make herself invisible. Blop exhaled deeply, grounding himself. Our quiet determination seemed to pull a brief pause in the chaos. Multiple sets of dangerous eyes turned toward us as we inched forward. I edged the hover sled ahead, eyes locked on the heat seeker who finally nodded, stepping forward. "Repairs, so everyone can get their fuel faster," I said. "What do you know?" The crowd parted grudgingly, letting us through with ease. Blip and Blop helped ease the sled along, even though it was motorized and didn't really need their help. We made our way to the green-scaled heat seeker behind the counter, who exhaled in relief. "Thank goodness," he said. The nozzle broke right after our regular supply ship left. Do you have time to stop by our sister colony on the fourth planet? We ordered extra parts, and from what we hear, they desperately need them. I glanced at Blip and Blop before replying. I think we can manage that. Let me check with the captain on rates and confirm. Behind me, the shouting resumed. Someone was still arguing about the right-of-way and fuel priority. The heat seeker gave a quiet affirmative while hailing someone else to verify the delivery details. Instead of drowning in the noise, I sent calm texts and invoices to whoever was in the ship's cockpit. Surprisingly, the fevered debate moved outside, leaving us some breathing room. By the time we had unloaded the delivery, except for the bundle destined for the sister colony, the hangar was almost serene. I hoped it would stay that way. I turned to the heat seeker before leaving and asked, "Have those bounty hunters been here before?" His scaly head shook slowly. "No, they haven't. We hope they don't stick around too long." "I hope so, too," I said softly. We bid our farewells. Then I, with Blip and Blop, maneuvered the nearly empty sled back toward the door. The only item left on it was a thick bundle of cables, carefully wrapped to keep out dust and tied down to prevent jostling during transit. I hoped the ride back wouldn't have any surprises. Just as I was about to open the door, cheers and thuds echoed from outside, from the group that had been squabbling not moments ago. One cautious step onto the dusty ground of the rural spaceport revealed the resolution of their differences. It wasn't a fight, nor was it a dance-off like I'd once witnessed. Instead, the macho types were taking turns throwing empty fuel tanks as far as they could. Their throws were impressive, far exceeding any human attempt. "Let's take the long way around," I suggested, nervously. "No kidding," said Blip, pushing the sled faster before anyone could include us as throw targets. "Probably a better option," muttered Blop. "Let's hope the sister colony is quieter." "Me too," I said, as we hurried back toward the ship amidst roars of triumph from the competition. Surprisingly, we ended up getting to see that sister colony ourselves. Usually, the crew took turns handing off deliveries, but this drop-off was unplanned, and our usual couriers were busy deep-cleaning the ship's medical bay. The new reception area was quiet, absent of any slabs of muscle-bound tension. I found myself appreciating the calm. "This is a lovely place," I remarked to the deep blue-scaled heat seeker behind the desk. The room was lined with windows showing rolling hills, clouds casting moving shadows over bushy trees and fluffy sheep-like creatures grazing. "The aromatic moss on the trees is particularly beautiful," she replied, her voice tired but warm, as another heat seeker fussed over our bundle of cables. "Too bad the locals aren't making up their monster stories," the first heat seeker added darkly. "Monster stories?" I asked. Blip and Blop became alert behind me. "Yeah," the first heat seeker replied. "We're sure about another livestock attack last night. People are going missing now, and not just a few. It's troubling." He offered me a glass of water, his scaled hand steady despite the anxious news. "We don't know what kind of monster it is yet, but we're getting close," he said. I stared again at the peaceful scenery outside, now seeing it in a different light. There was a menace beneath the beauty. "Are any predators eating people?" I asked. He shook his head. "No one gets eaten. The people that go missing come back eventually. The animals, however, are thoroughly mutilated. The parts missing but the bodies are left behind." Blip interrupted. "Have you set up security cameras?" "That's what these cables are for," the second heat seeker said, nodding to the bundle. "We're installing more cameras, ensuring they are connected to stable power." "Did the first camera catch anything?" "No culprits," said the darker heat seeker. "We're shooting for better angles, higher coverage. Whoever's doing this is smart. They use spotlights or possibly some natural bioluminescence to mess with the cameras." The pale heat seeker frowned. "The patterns left in the crops can't be made by creatures on foot. Not that quickly anyway." "Crop circles." I echoed. "Yes," he said. "People are being taken, abducted. The livestock mutilated. The crop circles are the sign." "You've seen this before?" I asked. "Not personally," I said with a frown. "But my home planet has a long history with this kind of interference." Blop added quietly, "The little gray guys, right? I've heard stories." "Those ones," I said. "Morally bankrupt pests who tormented my planet for generations. They never answered until we made contact with the wider galaxy. I made sure to urge the heat seekers to remain calm. Sometimes naming the enemy brings clarity. The darker heat seeker looked appalled. That fits the only local sightings we've had. They stay away from contact but seem to terrorize the isolated. Maybe they'll leave soon, asked the paler one hopefully. Probably, I said. They only prey on uncontacted populations that can't report them. I tapped my finger on the payment tablet. Let's finish quickly. I know exactly who to tell about these little gray monsters, someone who can deal with their kind of rule-breaking. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The payment finalized. I felt the weight of the conversation still pressing in my mind. The little gray invaders, the ones whispered about in fearful tones across multiple planetary systems, were no myth. They were here, and they were active. Blip and Blop trailed quietly behind, their senses sharpened by years of experience dealing with hostile environments and unpredictable clients. Despite their muscle and bluster, moments like these, when uncertainty loomed, made them remarkably cautious. Outside the peace of the sister colony's reception, the countryside seemed to hold its breath. Rolling hills, fragrant moss, and gentle creatures grazed undisturbed, or so it appeared. The contrast between tranquility and underlying menace gnawed at me. We should stay in communication with local authorities, I said to the heat seekers, who nodded curtly. The darker one added, We've sent patrols, but the abducted always return before we get there. So, it's a warning, not an outright attack, Blop murmured. But the brutal mutilations on the livestock, Blip's voice trailed off. Yes, I said grimly. A signature of chaos and control, meant to unsettle and warn. We'll help install the cameras, the heat seekers reassured. But we need your reputation, the pale one said, your contact with the galaxy. The last time these gray beings showed, only official intervention helped. I nodded. I know who to contact. They'll treat this seriously. With the conversation fresh in mind, I signaled to Blip and Blop. The quiet ride back to our ship felt weighted with urgency. The simple delivery was quickly turning into something far bigger. Part 3. Back to the ship and a plan take shape. Boarding the ship, we found the cockpit bath in the cold glow of control panels. Paint and MYR, usually handling arrangements and communications, were engrossed in medical bay overhauls, a perfect excuse for me and the twins to take on this new crisis. I relayed the details and exchanged glances with Blip and Blop. Their normally impassive faces tightened with resolve. We can't ignore this, Blip said, fingers flexing. If those gray guys are here, our territory is compromised. And if the locals can't protect themselves, Blop added grimly, it will get worse. I tapped the screen and started assembling a report, linking the known patterns of local attacks, crop circles, and the strange abductions. First step, we get more eyes on the colonies, I said. Surveillance drones, Blip suggested. If the cameras get disabled, drones might give better coverage. Good thinking, I answered, but someone has to fly it. We're short on personnel. Leave the flying to me, Blop announced, cracking a rare smile. Paint and MYR joined us, ready to pick up the pieces and offer input. Paint was skilled at diplomacy, learned from years dealing with diverse alien cultures. MYR specialized in logistics and tech, ideal for coordinating the next phase. Together, the team began shaping a plan. Extra security installed across vulnerable areas, drone patrols to scout crop fields after dark, and a discreet but high-alert watch on the spaceports and transit hubs. All the while, my mind circled back to the gray invaders. Cruel, elusive, and a wild card nobody wanted to provoke. Part 4. Shadows behind the peace. Over the next few days, the colonists' fear simmered beneath a thin veil of routine. Market stalls filled, children played near edge of forests, and sheep-like creatures meandered between homes under watchful eyes. Meanwhile, we worked, blending in with the locals while installing discreet security measures. Late one evening, a harsh alarm shattered the quiet. Surveillance data flagged strange movement near the outer fence. Blop and I rushed to the viewing station. On the display, swirling lights danced erratically over the fields, bioluminescent patterns unlike anything natural. Crop circles. I whispered. Blip's voice crackled in the comms. They're here. The lights intensified, pulsating rhythmically. Then silence. I locked eyes with Blop, tense muscle primed for what unseen threat was beyond the screen. Part 5. Contact and Consequences. Later that night, the colony gathered for an emergency council. Tension filled the air, faces etched with worry. I stood before the assembly, explaining the threats, the signs, and the need for unity. We face a danger unlike any we've seen. I paused, letting the words sink in. Your safety depends on vigilance, cooperation, with us and with the wider galactic community. The elders nodded gravely, some skeptical, others relieved to have allies. One elder, voice trembling with resolve, asked, "What exactly are these gray invaders?" I hesitated, then replied honestly, "They are beings who prey on isolated populations, cunning, cruel, uninterested in your lives, only in the chaos they sow." The room murmured, some terrified, others doubtful. But the truth had been laid bare. Part 6. The next steps. Over the next weeks, with local forces bolstered by our tech and strategy, small victories emerged. Several attempted abductions were halted, livestock attacks decreased, and the eerie crop circles became less frequent. Yet, the true enemy remained elusive. In the quiet moments, I thought about what we were up against, a shadow that thrived in darkness, exploiting isolation and fear. Our mission had shifted from delivery drivers to guardians, a line between trader and protector blurred forever. And somewhere out there, the little gray invaders watched, waiting for their next move.